Good morning and welcome to Sunday Story Hour, where we share real-life stories of how human design has helped our guests know themselves on a deep, transformative level. By knowing and trusting ourselves, we develop deeper, more honest relationships and unlock our true gifts. I'm Kathy Bashanko, and my guest this week is Mark Germain. Mark's a 3/5 Splenic Projector, right angle cross of tension. And I am really excited to talk to Mark. He's going to have a long story for us because Mark has been in his experiment for 18 years. Hi, Mark. How are you doing today?
Very good, Kathy. How are you?
I'm great. So 18 years. Wow. I wonder if anybody listening has maybe not even been alive that long. It's possible, right?
You never know. Yeah, sure.
Right? We're old like that.
Yeah, well, it's not that old, but yeah.
I know. I'm older than you, so I can say that. I'm old like that. Anyway, so I would love if you just dive right in and tell us a little bit about, 18 years. We only got an hour. So where you were at in your life and how human design came into it and just what that was like for you.
Oh, yeah, certainly. It's over now, 18 and change. And it's been quite a journey, quite a process. And but before that began, I had several other processes, in the mundane working world. And then I got into a spiritual, metaphysical, intuitive healing stage of my life in my 30s, where I discovered that I was this intuitive. And I began doing learning and training on all different types of modalities to work with energy and psychic work. And I was a professional intuitive and psychic at some point. And I did healing work and all these things. It was great. And I had lessons within that. There's progressions within that, like to trust my intuition and things like that, to really hone that skill set. And while I was working with clients, I was giving these really in-depth readings. I wasn't like this surface psychic. I would go like really deep into like their past, things, childhood, big life issues and stuff like that. And it was wonderful. Except one day I had another really successful consultation with someone who I had worked with before. And then I was like, it would be great if there was something more tangible to give this person than just what's coming out of me through me as advice. No matter how good it was or how correct it was, whatever, there felt something inside me that said, I wish there was something more, something tangible. And within days, my teacher, Peter Roth, at the time, he wasn't my teacher at that particular time, but he was the one who initiated me, I'm also a 2551. I was initiated into this metaphysical life. And then he said, hey, this human design thing, you should really find out about it, get a reading and maybe even pursue it. And so I did within days. And then, wow, that initial reading was quite profound. And it was really the beginning of truly understanding my life. Now, I was 39 at the time.
Can I interrupt you 1 second? So this Peter Roth, who introduced you to him?
Oh, well, that's a story in unto itself.
Okay.
I was working out at a gym after work, and in the vestibule while I was leaving, you go out one door and it had a little area before you head outside. And in the corner of my eye, I saw this magazine that said New Life Expo, and it had this psychic on it, Sean David Morton. And I was intrigued by it. Now, I hadn't gone to the psychic, I didn't do any of that stuff, but something was pulling me there. And it was that weekend. So I went in on a Sunday into Manhattan. I was living on Long Island, and all of a sudden I had to wait for the psychic, and they had all these classes that you can attend. One was two that really grabbed my attention. One was on breatharianism, and I thought that was kind of cool. And then the other one was on chakras, the tree of life, the auric field, the universal computer, all this energies and stuff. And that was run by Peter. And I went there and I was just so captivated by it. It was nothing I had ever heard before, but it felt so tangible and real to me. Like, this is definitely something I'm in. I don't know. This new, but it felt like it wasn't new.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up going to classes that actual next night in a snowstorm into Manhattan. I drove Upper West Side and I learned about muscle testing and applied kinesiology, and pendulums and different things. And that was just the first night. And that opened the floodgates. And then, so Peter was an integral part of me being introduced to that way of life, which then I pursued with vigor and became more honed in the skill set, and which led me then eventually to human design and that reading. And one of the things that was beautiful about that moment with Peter sharing with me about myself is it really was the beginning of reconciling my experience in this lifetime.
In what way?
Because I was able to make sense of what he was telling me and connecting everything to the past, like why things happened the way they did. As a 3/5 splenic projector, right mind, trying to be, this generator and manifestor, trying to make things happen and being met with not failure in a sense, or it didn't last, and that's part the 3, part the projector, part the right mind, all these different aspects. But holistically, I was this person who had a good amount of ability to work in the business world, but I also had a lot of different roadblocks that were coming up. Like everything was a means to an end in a way. As a 3/5, you discover process, you build and you learn,
Mm-hmm.
and what doesn't work to what does work and all that stuff. And these were just seemingly, upon reflection, just tools to be added to my experiential toolbox that I could use. And that was the case. And so it was such an amazing thing to just then discover this about myself, because it kind of relieved a lot of the self-hatred that I had for myself, because it was deep in there that, there was a part in my time where, I was married and had a child, 2 generators. My ex-wife is a generator. My son's a generator. And it was tough sometimes making ends meet, because of my design and what my trajectory really was here to experience and where I ended up going. But it still was a conundrum because, you're here to try to be the best that you could be for your family. And it was hard because I didn't fit the molds that generator life or that manifestor life. So no one was training you how to be a projector.
Yeah.
They still don't. The world does not know how to deal with a projector, let alone 18 years ago or past that when we were growing up. I mean, there were moments when I had deep recognition, and that's why I understood the recognition when he told me and how that success fell. But it was mostly the other stuff that I really resonated with because it was a lot of bitterness.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of failure. But it was also failure in the sense of not in the failure like it was bad, although we could take it that way. It was failure in the sense that I got to see the ins and outs, the machinations of life, and I'm observant and I see the patterns and so I was able to connect all these dots. So when Peter was sharing me this, and then later after learning, then taking it further, step by step by step, year after year after year, it just made more sense. More sense.
Yeah. So learning that, I think for the 3rd line, or for like myself as a 6th line, learning about that, the 6th line has that 3rd line element to the beginning of our lives. Just that idea of what doesn't work being the most priceless lessons we've learned, right? And I think of, excuse me, I think of a time when I was talking to someone who's a 1/3, and they had invested a bunch of money in something and then learned that something about themselves and their decision-making process in hindsight that they were like, I never should have done that. But I was like, but think of what you learned from that decision-making process.
Mhm.
Like she had this golden insight into how she functioned and what she really needed from another person that she would have that kind of interaction with. And for her, like that was just like, oh yeah, okay, that's probably worth more than if I had finished the program and gotten what the person was going to teach me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the life lessons that we learn through the experience. It's all, it's great, the experience, but knowledge is great, experience is great, but when you can match the two together and then you could be really aware of why these things are happening, that's what human design or the mechanics of human design provide the potential to really see things in a clearer, truthful light, and really shine on there. And it doesn't make anyone wrong. See that,
right.
That's the beauty of it. There's no shame or blame, it's just mechanics. And when we can understand that and embrace that, it makes life easier to accept at times. Now, there's other times where the not self mind, no matter how many years you're in this, is going to go bop, 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 and try to, hijack you and put you in places where the non self it's pervasive. You can't get rid of it. But the biggest thing is hopefully you don't make decisions from it.
Right. And I don't really personally, know another better way to refer to it, but the not self is what, human design uses to describe that, the shadow or the negative expression, but it really is still a part of us, right? Because it's a big part of that learning. What doesn't work? What's not giving me, bringing me success as projectors? What's not bringing me satisfaction for the generators? Feeling frustrated. Well, that not self is teaching you that. Some people call it the shadow self, but, I'd love to find a more empowering word. It's kind of like your dumb little brother, right? Or something. I don't know. It's this voice that doesn't stop in your head. And for me, I think it's interesting how no matter how long I can feel like I've learned a lesson, that voice will still come back and test me, tell me, no, that's wrong. You should be scared. No, you should be thinking about this and trying to solve this with your mind and, all this stuff instead of trusting, right? That's why my word this year is trust, because I just gotta trust. And I want to kind of segue to something I really wanted to, if I haven't cut off a big part of your story, because we can get back into the story too. Okay, so I know you have told me a little bit about how you trust your splenic authority so deeply that you don't know why it says no, and so I'd love if you'd talked a little bit about what that was like for you to get in touch with that deep sense of trusting that authority.
It kind of works hand in hand what I hinted on before about being an intuitive and trusting what you're getting, and it's a process where I think through practice or, through repetition. I do have the 4816, the channel of talent, the wavelength. So, it's through repetition, through practice that you really develop a skill, and I think, and that's also what I find is the most quintessential projector channel, because it embraces the whole projector process in that channel. But it's that repetition of going through and hearing, the spleen is that small voice, it's a body movement. It depends on your configuration, how you might experience it. For me, I hear it and feel it. I've had it, say stop or no. I've had it say slow down, just like, and I didn't one time, and I paid the price for not, I tried to have
only once. You're a third line.
No, that's not. But that was a memorable one because I was skating in Santa Monica, flying down the beach. I was really moving and grooving, beautiful day. There's no one around, and I'm flying, and all of a sudden I hear slow down. I'm like, I'm slow down to what? All of a sudden up ahead, there's this only place in the whole beach really where there's another path that comes and forms like this triangle with a sand in the middle. All of a sudden, everyone is blocking this little intersection. And I'm flying. And I have to like dance. I hit a crack. I fly in the air. I land on my ribs in the sand, thankfully, not the concrete. And I'm like, and everyone's like, "You all right?" Yeah. I'm okay. But it was like, I was like having a conversation, like, why do I need to slow down instead of just slowing down?
Mm-hmm.
So I learned the hard way in that one. And another time was, I was going to clean a mug at my mother's and I didn't want to burden her. But I was going to leave it and I walked away and my mind said, go clean it. And but then intuitively I heard no. But I went back out of the room and then went back in again to clean it because I felt like guilt. I'm a whole person. Right. I felt guilt. And I was like, all right. All of a sudden I sliced my hand open, cleaning this mug. It broke. And I had to go to the emergency room for stitches and everything. And I didn't listen. And then I can't really close my hand. So it's a reminder of me just trusting that voice, that moment, that splenic hit.
Yeah. Yeah. I have those stories. Every time I've gotten hurt, it's pretty much been that sort of a situation where something told me to do something. And for me, a lot of times it was what will people think if I stop and do this type of response? Will I be, will I hold everybody up? Will people think I'm scared? Will people, those, they were just brief things where my mind said, oh, I can't do that. That people would think whatever. Like,
yes.
And I've gotten hurt many times in those situations. But so to
piggyback though, so over time, we're talking about like trust is your word for the year, and for projectors, that's very important word. And for anyone, but really, but to trust your authority is really getting to the place to not caring about the answer.
Yeah.
It's not about the why. The mind is always looking for the why or the reason. It doesn't matter because either it's correct or it's not correct. And if it's correct and you enter it correctly, that's the experience you're going to get. That's what's the important part. And it may be very different than what you think or the reasons why or whatever. It has nothing to do with it sometimes. And then, but when you go through it and you have that signature, whichever your signature is to your type, then you get, for me, that success, or for you, for that success. But, before early on, I would like try to mentally capitulate back and forth, like, well, let's find the reason why that's a yes. Then I just said, forget that step. Just trust in the spleen. So people always ask me like, oh, they asked me about something. I said, well, sometimes I need more details also. There's a specificity that you need sometimes in an invitation as a projector, that it could be a yes to or a no to. If something changes a little bit, that hit could change. You don't know why, but it's just not right. So you just have to trust. You have to learn how to trust.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I do have a defined spleen. So I get those splenic hits, but that's not my authority. I have a defined emotional solar plexus. So that obviously,
that's true.
That means I have that emotional clarity that needs to come in. But I have still learned that if the spleen says no, then at least right now, it's no.
Well, it's physical safety and security. Right. I mean, you don't need to emotionally wait to avoid trying to get this.
Right. Does your mind say, well, if you hadn't, it's good that you did it, because if you had listened to your spleen, maybe your mother would have gotten her hand cut. Like, those are the kinds of things that
Yeah, maybe. Except my hand's very wide, so her hand probably
Oh,
would.
yeah, that's true, right?
I was trying to, try to get in there really good and clean it, and
It would,
but
it
yes,
would,
but your point is well taken, because you don't know, and so that's why and emotional people, they actually act. Splenic people actually wait a lot. Emotional people become spontaneous often. The not self
oh, right,
emotional
right.
person.
Yeah.
They
So
they want to do it right then. Let's do it. And so it's the
I'm excited.
opposite.
Let's do it now,
Yeah,
right?
let's do it now. And the splenic person's like, well, let's wait and figure this out here. Like, it's like, it's like, no, you got to go the other way. They're mirrors to each other in the chart. So they're opposites in a sense. And so they reflect the not self also is the opposite.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to just jump to, so you've been doing this for 18 years. And
Right.
traditionally, when people learn about human design as an experiment, we're told it takes 7 years to decondition the body. And I'm about 7.5 years in since I first found human design, maybe almost close to 8 years now. But I always say I don't really have, like everything in life, I'm not really clear on when my experiment actually started, because I didn't really try in the beginning. But in a lot of ways, it made it more pure because I just kept having all those hindsight thoughts. But I wonder, like, if for you, you felt a delineation point at 7 years, and then what happened after that for you? Like,
Well, first was the 3.5 year mark. I think that's a mark where um, the mind up to that point is really trying to fight, what you're doing in a sense. And I think after the 3.5 year mark, it gets a little easier. It's like you're climbing the mountain, then you're starting to go downhill a little bit, But the 7 year mark, what I consider, that's really truly the beginning of the experiment or the experience, however you want to phrase it. Because I think it takes that amount of time to get to a place where you can actually see yourself as yourself, and others could see yourself as yourself, even though there's still more things going on, because you're always going to be dealing with conditioning. Conditioning never goes away. Conditioning is not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just what it does. So you're always dealing with conditioning. If you're in groups, you're with other people, unless you're living alone with nobody, you're always going to be dealing with that. So that's why it's also an ongoing process, a refinement process, I like to call it, because it's just stacks of 7 year cycles.
I think of it like, that upward spiral. So you're back at the same place, but you're at a higher point, and then you're going through some of the same lessons, but on a much higher level, and then around
Yes.
until you basically spin off the earth and you're gone, right? I think we're always going upward in spirals and learning, because if we're not evolving and we're not growing, we're never going to be just static. We're going to be devolving or decomposing, right?
No, and that's
Right.
That's the important. And I would say anyone who's new to design or in it for a little while, I've seen a lot of patterns. I've been on Facebook for 2009 dealing with human design. So I watch for the patterns. That's just part of who I am, really, a lot. And it's an interesting phenomena, one of which I was a part of. No one escapes these phenomena. And it's like you can really learn the information and glean it really well initially. You can make sense of it. Especially us projectors, we really love a good system. And when it makes sense, it's logical, we can really embrace it.
Right.
But we almost get ahead of ourselves in a sense, because our mind is so good with the information, but it's also about embodying the information and integrating what we know to what we experience. And that takes time. And a lot of people often, they fight human design in a way because there's certain things that in their beliefs and things that it doesn't mesh. And they'll say, I'll take this part, but I won't take that part. And then later they say, well, actually, I need that part. It's like,
Like what would you say people a lot of times don't want to take, and then later realize they
well, It can be a variety of things because it is such a complex and deep, intricate system. But the idea of no free will is a big one. The voice told Ra, no choice, no free will, the illusion of free will. And I've felt that beforehand. I heard that beforehand intuitively. So when I got to human design, I first heard Ra talk about it. It so resonated in my body. I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. I mean, there was just like a frequency that was so resonant. And we are on the same fractal, but it's like so resonant to me when I heard him say it. And I'm like, yes. And I was speaking human design before human design. It said this was a system to put it all together in a language and a thing that made it more sense. It gave it more context and fully fleshed out way to dealing with it. But
my body says no to that idea.
To which idea?
Of no choice.
Oh, see, yeah, that could be something. But to me, it's the more I've been in this, the more clear it is to me that that's the absolute truth for me. No choice whatsoever.
So how with that idea do you help people then?
Well, you give them, this is dependent upon how you hold the context. And this is why I think, Ra mentioned the largest part of why human design came in existence was to people to operate correctly as themselves, but also to see with awareness, true awareness, all right, and be able to see life in a way that they can be the passenger and not necessarily try to drive the car. Everybody still wants to drive the car. And that's where a lot of people early on in human design are still trying to drive the car.
But isn't just becoming the passenger a choice versus driving the car?
I don't see a choice in that either. It's like I don't have a choice in whether I got to human design or whether I stayed with human design for 18 plus years. There's absolutely no choice in that. Now, I've had breaks where things were less intense than others in terms of how I live with human design over the years. But in terms of working with people or whatever, but there's no choice in that. There's, you can get distracted by all kinds of things, but for me, it always comes back to this. Now, will it potentially evolve into something else? I don't know, maybe. But, I don't think, because people talk, let me rephrase this. We each have a personal trajectory in this life. We have a geometry. We have people that we're here to meet and people are here to meet us and interact with. There's just things that are meant to happen. And the only way that works, if there is no choice, because if there was choice, there would be no way that would work. Because one person's choice can throw out the whole thing.
And you don't think it does?
No, because I think there's a bigger picture behind it. I think there's a grander cosmic thing behind it. So, if people are unfamiliar, we're part of the unborn entity, this Maya, this illusion. And then there's something beyond that, ring past not. But often Ra would say he believed, the mental ability based on our form to handle what is beyond what we don't know. So this is, human design is the mechanics of the Maya. The Maya is defined as the illusion. So we're living in illusion. And a magnetic monopole is one of the agents that holds the design and the personality together in the illusion of our separateness, which means we're not separate. We're all part of this greater consciousness field or frequency field. And what we're really, according to the voices, is here to bring experience, self-reflected consciousness to the totality, which is this unborn entity. So we're somewhat like filtering mechanisms in a way. So we get to experience life in that way. And we can see whether or not we are doing it through the lens of correctness or through the lens of incorrectness, and how that experience differs.
But if there's no choice, then
Mhm.
how is there a correct and an incorrect? Doesn't that mean that personal responsibility goes out the window?
It can, in a sense, in a more cosmic way of looking at it. Ra would often say, "This is not a moral system. We don't have a. It's not about bad or good. It's about this or that." So I look at it that way as I'm a very big picture person. But I'm also in the details. So I straddle the micro and the macro of the way I look at life, and I just see no choice. When I look around at people and they're speaking their keynotes, whether they're not self keynotes or self keynotes, they're speaking it. I hear it all. You just see it.
Explain to those listening what you mean by that, speaking their keynotes.
Well, we all have in our design certain like channels or gates or how we're wired, and within that, there's our truth can come out in a sense of our true voice or our trueness, that we are being, like as a projector, truly recognized for ourselves, not for something that people are projecting on and is incorrect. So, when we live in the world, when I experience the world is predominantly not self.
Right.
It's just not self-life, and predominantly. I don't like to classify everyone's like absolutely not self, or, there's moments where we can have both.
Sure.
So for people to experience, you can see, like as a 3-5, I could see when it entered something correctly. And it doesn't mean when it's entered correctly, it's going to be all rainbows and unicorns, because you get the experience that you need to get, which could be something that doesn't work. Right. But then it really is a lesson you can really fully learn, versus maybe when you do it incorrectly, maybe you learn something from it, but it becomes more about the not self signature. Because when you enter something correctly and it doesn't work, it could still be a success as a projector. But if I enter something incorrectly as not self, or a mental decision, not self mental decision, and it doesn't work, there's bitterness. So the keynotes of your signature will tell you how your experience is unfolding and whether you entered something correctly or incorrectly. And you get to witness that. See, I watch myself all day doing stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not all day. There's some days.
Robin Witt calls that the witnessing observer. I'm sure some does too, but I like that. That feels really resonant to me.
Yeah. So I can see myself do things going, what am I doing? I'm as much as watching this movie as anyone else. I'm like, see, it's about watching your own movie. Can you get to the place when you watch your own movie?
I was having a difficult conversation with my 5-1 manifesting generator husband, and it was so interesting as my witnessing observer is listening to the things I'm saying that he's doing and telling me, you're doing that same thing. You're just projecting that onto him. And I'm like, shut up. You're not helping. Right? But it is helpful, because then later you can go back and say, okay, so how can I focus it on where I'm doing that instead of on where he's doing it, that sort of thing. So that is helpful. But that, to me, is a choice, that I can listen to the witnessing observer or not listen to the witnessing observer.
Yeah, well, they've done a lot of studies on this. Actually, there's tests that scientists have performed that actually show and demonstrate that they can predict with 100% accuracy what a person's going to choose before they consciously choose it, up to 4 to 9 seconds. Some tests show fractions of seconds, and some are longer. So, but it shows that before the person has consciously made that choice, they think they made that choice, the choice is already made.
And what are they
making the choice?
Do you know? What are they measuring for that test?
They're looking at the brain scan. So within the brain, They can see where something's being highlighted and emphasized, and they can then predict with certainty what that person's going to choose, not what they've chosen, what they're going to choose. So who's really choosing?
Interesting. So this is something where old me would have needed to double down. Old not self me would have had to double down on my idea of, no, we have a choice. But left angle cross of uncertainty, fully open ajna, hanging gate 64 gate of confusion me can say, that's interesting. And I'll sit with this. And as life unfolds, I will see how my experience with this continues to evolve, because any attempt for me to find certainty in the moment of what you're saying is just me,
Well, yeah. Your
trying.
open ajna and your cross of
Right.
uncertainty.
Or it's also the possibility of your feeling of certainty. Your defined head and ajna can really have a big impact on my
It certainly can.
right? And so, but it's really been one of the most interesting things that I have witnessed in myself in this whole deconditioning process and really knowing myself, is this idea that I don't have to agree with people, and but I don't have to throw them out when I don't, and I've had a lot of those experiences in the past where I would find somebody that I thought was interesting, and then all of a sudden I'd find out they had some horrific political standpoint that I disagreed with, or they, a worldview that was so different than mine. And then I would think, well, okay, now I have to take them from this bucket and put them in this bucket, because I had to have certainty about what, but we all have so many different paths and trajectories that, when we start only hanging out and talking to people who agree with us, then we really limit our ability. And with my open ajna, I'm here to hold space for all these ideas. So I'm going to hold space for that idea, but I certainly still in my body feel like, I feel like I have autonomy on my life. And like I said, not saying I'm certain of that, but that's where I'm feeling at this time. So we've had some comments here about the, just in general that we can look at later. But I did see, there was one I wanted to read. Mariana says, I like to think of no free will more like a radical self-acceptance, a full trust and acceptance in all that I am, as I am trusting that this vessel is designed for exactly what I'm meant to do. Our design makes our mission and purpose foolproof. It's beautiful. And I love that way of looking at it. And that does relate to the idea of trust that, like I said, is my word. But for me, trust is that if I get out of my own way, things are going to unfold the way. And maybe that's where, if I get out of my own way,
that's
out of my own mind, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that very act of getting out of my own way is a trust. And I do think when you're talking about, I believe we do all come here. Now we're getting into a lot of different stuff. I do believe we all come here with agreements and contracts and, stuff we're going to work out with other people. But I don't think we always get it done. I don't think we always, that's why karma continues. That's why generational patterns continue. I don't think that people come in and say, okay, we're going to continue to perpetuate this cycle of alcoholism, or we're going to continue to perpetuate this cycle of abuse. I don't think people come in with that in mind for their life lesson. I think that people are afraid to make the choices that it takes to heal the wounds and move forward, or they don't have the strength to do it. And, we're getting to a point now where there is so much more happening in the world that people are healing those things. And I think it's because all this information is now readily available to anyone. The tools, excuse the tools we need for healing are right at our fingertips.
Yeah. One thing about human design, it was also the design of all forms. You call it human design because, you have to promote it to people.
Right.
Actually,
Yeah.
but it's the design of all forms, and it is about the design aspect. It's about form. It's about form. This is a form principle. So when we talk about human design and its actual structure, it's based on the form. It's about the personality coming in as a passenger in the form with a driver who's the magnetic monopole, which is just unipoling. It's one magnet one way. It's not going two ways, and it has a trajectory to it. Now, I think for an experience, you're going to have all this and that. I think that's part of the overall experience, is that you have the not self and the self, and that's why we have openness and definition, and we have that contrast. It makes this whole holistic experience that we have as a person. But it is about, when Rod talked about it and I talk about it, it's about surrendering, right? What are we surrendering to, though? People always say that in the world. I remember in my spiritual, hey, surrender to what? At least I know through experience that these mechanics work. They're reliable. They're valid.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Time and time again, with hundreds of people, thousands of people are validating the experience of these things, and the mechanics will never really change. Well, there will be some change in the future, but that's not here. But what my point is that it's our understanding of the mechanics within our own self and within others that changes over time, not the mechanics themselves. So the mechanics are very real and tangible, to at least to me and a lot of other people, and that's what you can rely on and surrender to.
Yes.
It's about stepping back and not trying to be. Like any projector, first thing I look at is they are they wired to be a not self manifester or a not self generator, or both? Sometimes it could be both. But I have a very heavy proclivity to being a not self manifester, but I also have a hanging 14 on my sacral, which is like the worker that overdoes it, right? So when I'm in that not self generator mode, I can be that, or I try to make things happen.
Right.
And that's not me. So it has to come through recognition and invitation, which is through waiting. But waiting, not passively waiting, like just not waiting, but doing your thing as you go on.
Right. So I would say that I've always thought of myself as a not self-manifesting generator, because that's just, I'm one gate away from that in multiple ways. So, and I'm also surrounded by them. I was born in a family where 3 of my sisters were, and multiple people. I don't really know my parents' designs because we don't have their birth times, but, so yeah, but the very act of surrendering is what I feel is the choice, right? We can go down fighting. People can fight to the very end, or they can surrender. And when people fight from a place of fear or a lack of self-worth, those sorts of things are choices they are making in order to try to prove something. So maybe if we say that once we surrender, any choice we make really is an act of not self, maybe. I don't know. It just, because maybe once we surrender and we really are listening to our body, and I'm really consciously aware of how my body talks to me now, just as much as I am about that, voice in my head that I'm going to, smack all the time. But I hear that voice, but I also feel in my body when I am speaking my truth, when I am coming from a place of fear. And there's all these ways that we can learn to listen to our body to know our truth. But just having the desire to get in touch with that, to me, is the ultimate choice.
Yeah, I can understand that. I understand where you're coming from. I would, and I believed that at one point myself, earlier in my life, but to some degree. But later, even in my spiritual metaphysical days, where that was my primary focus, I was hearing that there was no choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, to me, because I could also predict people's futures at that time. I was good at, the correct interaction brought about something that I could share something about somebody's future. So what am I tapping into?
Right.
People that I'm tapping into that I don't even know about. Never even met this person. I might not even be physically in contact with them. They could be halfway around the world, and I'm giving them a reading about all kinds of people in their life and what's going to happen. But how do you do that? Because you're just reading the lines of trajectory. You're reading what's coming, and certain people have that ability to tap into that more than others. And but to a degree, I guess we all have some capacity there. But we all have a capacity to dribble a basketball. Doesn't make us all Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? But there's differences there.
It's interesting because, if you think about it over time, if you've studied any world religions, this is a constant thing that, it's separated different Christian faiths. Like some people said, you earn your way into heaven. Some people believed in predetermination, and there's all these different things. So this same idea of choice and no choice is kind of one of those that's
in the ethers. It's in the
there
ethers
forever. And so I don't. So maybe we should move on, because I don't think we're going to stop it here. So
sure.
Yeah.
Let's get to something practical but I think it's important to have a greater context to see the life in, because then it gives the life, the individual life, a proper context. I think life is context. Context is life. So I think these things are important to keep in mind and to maybe see to whatever degree. I just know over my time, it's become more clearer to me over the years.
Yeah.
It just validated more and more.
Now, you had a very different experience even coming into this than, myself, or, everybody has a different experience. And that's one of the reasons I started this series, is for people to see that there is no one path. There is no one way that people find human design. There's not one trajectory. But, I came from a very, I've always been open to other things, but middle class, North Atlanta suburbs, went to the Episcopal Church, was highly open-minded for, to other things compared to most of the people that I interacted with. But, I had a pretty, white bread kind of life. It was a beautiful life, but, I was not exposed to a lot of those sorts of things in this area that I live in. And like I've said, my sister, who lives in Thailand and had a much different trajectory, exposed me to a lot of things that I've now found actually a lot of people around here are involved in. But coming in for me and understanding myself has opened up a doorway into me trusting my own intuition and my body and my sense of knowing in a way that feels like you already had open to you when you found human design. So that that's a very different kind of thing. But what would you say to people who, like, maybe they've gotten their chart and maybe they know there's something there, but they're still not really, for example, the generator who's known their type for a year or two, and they still don't really, like, when you ask them, do you trust your cycle? They'll go, well, yeah, da, da, da. And you're like, that was a yes, no question. You failed, right? Because
Yeah.
you didn't answer it right then, right? So what do you say to those people who are still just kind of staying on the surface and not?
Well, there's no right or wrong.
Right,
That's the first thing. So there's no judgment about whether they're doing it correctly or incorrectly. Now, you can discern whether someone did something incorrectly or correctly, but it doesn't mean that's good or bad. It means what it means. You make it a distinction. So I would say to people who are in this, you don't have to do anything.
right,
There really isn't an answer because everyone is different. So I would have to work with that person to help that person identify, maybe recognize something in them that they can work with. As a generalization, it's very hard because everyone is so different. Their trajectories are very different. They're coming from different backgrounds and experiences, and their life situations can be very different. Listen, a lot of people meet this as conditioned adults. They're in relationships, they're in families, they're, whether they're young or they're older, they're married, they have kids. There's people getting this information in their 70s for the first time, and they're embracing it,
right.
and it's like, so how do you have a one particular answer? I would say, if you feel the movement, embrace it, go with it, but don't be so critical on yourself. Be kind to yourself, be aware that, hey, it is a process. If this is meant to be, you'll get it. If it's meant to be, you'll get it. Ra was asked one time, he goes back, it's like, do I have a choice being in this class? He's like, no choice. You're in this class. We have a choice speaking on here right now. No, I didn't think we had a choice. It's just meant to be. So people, they can surrender to, maybe seeing, like for a generator, just embrace maybe engaging your gut. A lot of people who are generators that I've worked with over the years don't even know they're making a sacral sound, especially if they're unconscious, defined, or at least in part also. They don't even know it. I mean, I've had people say, oh, I don't do that. And I just asked them 5 questions where they did it and they weren't even aware of it, and then for some, they're very suppressed. They've been conditioned not to use their gut. And I did that to my own son at one time. I was like, Dylan, use your words. He has a strong gut. He said, strong integration, mostly being strong gut. And you just have to, hopefully people can reinforce it, and you have allies that can help you do that.
You mean you told him that before you knew human design?
Oh yeah. I was like, yeah, because
Sure.
I have gate 12 twice, the gate of articulation. I like to speak, and at the 4323, it's like, and I'm like, and I'm hearing dad, I'm like,
or like me as a projector mom of a splenic manifestor daughter with feared motivation, constantly, trying to ask her why she did things and what do you think that person felt when you did that, or you should think about how you're making other people feel, and she's got a completely open G center, or not completely open, but an undefined G center. Anyway, yeah, it's easy what we condition people all the time by treating them the way we think.
In a homogenized way that there's no fault of anyone's own. That's why I don't blame my mom or my dad or their mom and dad. It's just, I don't blame anyone for that.
Right.
The not self, though, can buy into that movie.
Right.
Into that, all that pain and suffering, which can be, I'm not wanting to diminish anyone's pain or suffering, because we all have had it and I have felt it. I still can feel it. But I know that it's my not self that's really the one that's spinning the wheels when that happens. I know the difference between the true self, the authentic self. There's no issues. There's no problems. It's the not self that creates all the drama.
Yeah.
It's the one that spins the wheels and goes to places where it wants to go when you really just see it for what it is. Oh, that's my not self. And maybe you're stuck in it, and I can even identify it, and it's still happening. But I could say, well, I was not self. I can own it. I've had people tell me that too. Oh, you're being not self at one time. It's like, yeah, I am. All right, yeah, thanks. It's like, it happens.
Yeah. Even
You're
after
with people.
15 years.
You're with people in an environment, and different people are going to bring different things out. Everybody is only who they are to that person who they're with. And what I mean by that is, if I'm with you in person somewhere, we have a certain mechanic connection. Our mechanics meet and we create this third entity that has its own things. But you know me because of my mechanics, and I know you because of your mechanics as us together. But that doesn't mean you all know me the way I know this person knows me, and I know them, and you know somebody else. They might see you differently than I do because of the way the mechanics interact.
Now, you specified in person. I believe that happens even like right now in this conversation, because the time space is.
Well, you're dealing with consciousness fields. It's all frequency. Right. Even if you go to the basis of neutrinos flying through space, we're getting neutrinos, say, going through us into each other, whatever which way. But we're then being able to filter that in a specific way and take it in. And that's why I could read people maybe from, across the world or whatever, and not need to be in proximity to them, because it's not limited to it. I would say a personal connection in aura could be different and more intimate.
Yeah. Maybe
more hyper-focused or more tangible, or feel it in a different way. But I don't think afar is necessarily, you can't experience that either. You can.
It's interesting because I have a friend who the first time we met was via Zoom, and we were doing a bunch of work together for months where we would meet every week and do like a course we were doing together. And then we had an opportunity maybe 5 or 6 months later to meet in person. I think it was that 5 or 6 months later. It might have been a year and 5 months later, but I don't know. I just know when we met in person, many of the same energetic issues that we had the first meeting, that we worked through, that we looked at our charts and we understood the workings of, we both felt them again, right? And we were able to kind of pull back and go, oh, feeling this again. Whereas when we meet on Zoom, we don't really feel that anymore because we're used to that. So there was an intensity there again that we had to like rewrite the story that, what was happening, because our mind is trying to tell us this person's doing something to you, but it was all about, compromised channels and
it's all mechanics
that were going on. Right. And past traumas in this life and that sort of thing that, triggered memories of whatever. So yeah, I think there is a difference when we're in aura than when we're in this type of aura. We're still in aura, but so that's why I paused for a minute, because I'm like, I don't know what to do with that word. But we are getting to the top of the hour now, and I just want to say I've been kind of keeping an eye on the comments, but if anybody has any questions, now would be the time to drop them in the comments on Facebook. And in the meantime, though, I don't know if there's anything that we didn't touch on that you might feel that you could share.
Just to piggyback on something you just, with that exchange with the person that you had and everything, I think, one of the things to remember is that this is about 9-centered consciousness and a 9-centered life, which the world is really living a predominantly 7-centered consciousness life, even though we're a 9-centered being. And that's why there's a lot of incongruence with people living in the world, because they're still trying to be this 7-centered being in the world, how to fit in, but they're 9-centered, and it's a square peg, round hole syndrome. It just doesn't fit. This is about exchanging outer authority. This is about you and me having an exchange right now. This is what life is really here to be about. It's not here to be about survival. It's not
Mhm.
here to be about all that kind of stuff. This is really, now that's idealistic in a sense because we're still in this Maya with all that stuff. But inevitably the ideal or where we're going is to really be able to share this and agree to disagree or just be open to anything or not, whatever, just exchange our outer authority. Now, our unique outer authority, not an homogenized, dumbed down the way the world, flattens our uniqueness. You know, this is about becoming more ourselves and then being able to share it, being able to share it.
Really, that was beautiful, but I would love you to really quick expand on this idea of outer authority because it's not something we talk a lot about in human design. We talk about inner authority, right? So, expand a little bit on.
Well, inner authority is how we make
Right,
decisions as
right,
ourselves,
right.
right? So
Yeah, but for the audience.
outer authority is what we share with the other, and hopefully we're doing it when we're doing it through correctness, because that's a different experience than incorrectness. It's about sharing all these things because the mind is a beautiful thing. We talk about the non-self mind, but we can measure and organize and have all these different reflections, experiences, but often it's not for us in a way. It's for, the 64th gate, I have the 6447, that experiential past, figuring out the confusion. It's not for your own life. It's for others. When you try to figure it out and make the dance and make it a mental decision, and you make that action based on what your thoughts on your experience, that's the problem. What I've learned from my experience, I'm here to share with other people. And that's sharing outer authority. Now, I have hope as a motivation. So motivation, or our personality on Earth, is where we really get to express ourselves uniquely. Except there's a place in that where, and it's purposely done, where we can be in transference or a kind of distraction, an alternate motivation that's not really us. And that's where most people are. And for me, that would be guilt. It's trying to fix things, make things happen, fix myself.
I'm the opposite.
Yeah, you're the opposite. So, right. So, but I'm here to, sit by the river, wait for somebody to come by and tap into that outer authority. Go, hey, Mark, you know something. Can you share that with me? And if I get it's correct, yes. That's sharing what I know, like we're doing right now. We're sharing outer authorities. Right? This is not about decision making right now.
Right.
Yeah, for ourselves. We already decided we were going to be here or some level of way. That mechanism was correct for us to come through here, right? So now we're sharing our authority and people are listening.
Yeah.
And they get to
my hope is that it helps someone with a problem because that's my motivation, right?
That's the whole idea.
Help someone figure out more about, or not figure out because that's mental, but help someone feel confident to do whatever the next right thing is for them to do.
Absolutely. And when I work with people one-on-one, I do that by hopefully providing that hope. And when I do, I get that signature of success because it's that innate thing. Our signatures are not about anything out there. It's in here.
Right.
If you're a generator and you get that satisfaction, there's nothing like it. Peace for a manifester, they love the peace.
Well, that's a great transition to wrapping up and telling people how they can work with you if they are interested, Mark. This has been really an interesting conversation. I'm sure people would love to know how to get in touch with you.
Sure. Okay. Well, there's a few ways. Now, I don't have my website up and running yet. I used to have one a long time ago. I've been more word of mouth and through different things. I'm primarily on Facebook or Instagram. You can find me on Facebook in the comments. It's Mark Germain, I think number 9 or something after that. But and then Instagram, which I have not posted yet, but I will be soon, starting there. And my email is markgermainhd@gmail.com. So if people are interested in reaching out, they can do it that way. And I know, Kathy, you have it in the comments section somewhere. Right?
Yes. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in there and I'll try to get it in the show notes for the podcast because Mark, you are the first one who's going to be going direct to podcast. All my previous episodes just dumped or dropped into podcast format. And so this conversation will be available Tuesday on all major podcast platforms. So yay for that. And hopefully I'll figure out how to get your stuff into the show notes as well for that. So, but I really want to thank you for this conversation. It's been an interesting, I guess we had no choice, right? You had to come.
No, and
Right.
it's perfect. It's perfect. I feel more hopeful right now. I feel successful in our exchange. So to me, that was, it feels correct. And just that's how I know.
Awesome. So every week we share stories of how my guests have come to understand themselves in a more loving and empowering way through the lens of human design. How you think and speak about yourself matters. Human design can show you the reframe of not only your own story, but the story you tell yourself about your relationships. If you're ready to start living a better story, I would love to help guide you through the process of embodying who you came here to be. To work with me, I invite you to set up a free call at kathybashanko.com or message me through any of my social media formats. And like I said, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.